The fly we'll be tying today is a shank sculpin, or also known as an old ugly or an old ugly sculpin. It's by a very noted Pennsylvania fly fisherman and fly tyer by the name of Ed Shank. This fly has been responsible for hundreds of good fish for me, and I've been fishing it for over 40 years. I started fishing it in 1973, and I've just caught tons, hundreds of really good fish on it. It works extremely well when the water's murky. Sculpins are a fish that live in most high quality trout streams, and Spring Creek, for example, Penns Creek, Fishing Creek are full of them. So it's a very common thing for, especially in murky water, for trout to see these sculpins dislodged from the bottom. I've taken a long shanked 4X long hook. This is a Daiichi 2220 number 6. You could also use a Tiemco 5263 number 6 and put it in the vise. And what I need to do, of course, is take the barb off, because any fly this big with a barb on it is just asking for trouble if you put it in yourself, and it's very hard to get out of fish. Next, take a piece of, this is medium lead wire, and I'm actually going to double wrap it to make a weighted underbody. This fly is tied with fairly buoyant materials, so we'll definitely want to put a little lead wire underneath there. And what I'll do here at this point is just wrap backwards to actually make kind of a double layer of lead wire. That actually gives you a little bit of a taper, and it's better than just wrapping a single layer of very heavy lead wire. And we'll wrap a few more turns. All right, I'm spooled up with UTC 140 black thread. That is a very stout tying thread that's extremely strong, but does not tie with a great deal of bulk. And the first thing I want to do is to cover this base totally, or almost totally anyway, with tying thread. First, that's going to lock it in place and keep it stable. At this point, you can give this base a coat of Flex Cement if you prefer. I'm not going to do that here. That's just putting a good dab of Flex Cement on there. That helps hold the body and the tail permanent so they don't slip and slide. Here is an even tipped marabou feather, and what I'm going to do is simply strip off the fluff along the sides, which I don't want for this fly. Measure along the hook shank. I want the tail about equal to the shank of the hook, and then I'll lay this extra up in here and use the butt of that to fill in that gap. And as you can see now, my tail has kind of given me a nice forward taper, make it a very, very nice job to wrap a body. This is literally leech yarn, also known as mohair in black. You can tell it's nice and fuzzy. When Ed Shank tied this fly, he actually did a fur body on it with a spinning loop. This is a way of doing it, I think, that's a little easier to manipulate. Just grasp that with the thread, and you can see it's really, really fuzzy. Gives you great appearance. Come forward and stop just in front of the body. You can see now, one of the things about this fly is because we're spinning a deer hair head, you'll want to leave this area up in here literally almost half a shank free of material, so the hair will spin much easier. Okay, now we're going to wrap this mohair body, and on big sizes I actually will wrap a double layer. Here I think we'll just go a little bit overlap, and you can see it's building a nice fuzzy body. You can actually stroke it backwards a little bit. It gives you a super nice buggy appearance with very, very little work. And we just come up forward, put a wrap, and tie off. So again, we have that fuzzy body. If you prefer, you can actually physically trim this a little bit, but I kind of like the fuzziness. I think it contributes to the life of the fly. Now we're going to advance into the bare portion of the hook, and we're going to spin a collar and use the points of the collar to form what are essentially pectoral fins on the sculpin. This is a piece of nice even tipped deer hair, and as you can see, the tips are nice and straight. They're not beaten up, and we're going to use a real good dollop of this, a real solid heavy chunk of this, to start the pectoral, or to form the pectoral fins and also start the head. Get your scissor points, or maybe even use a brush to do this, and try to twitch out all the loose hairs and the short hairs. And you can see there's a lot of fuzz and unnecessary stuff in this. Okay, put the tips down in a hair stacker. Give it a few sharp wraps on your table. And extract the hair with the nice even tips. You can see that's a really substantial batch of hair. Measure such that the tips extend just to the bend of the body, and this is a little bit of extra hair we can take off. So you want to start forming the head with that. Take a couple loose turns of thread, and you can see this hair is nice and soft and is going to spin well. Spin the hair, and if you need to, give it a little bit of assist with your fingers. Stand up the butts and flare through them. Okay, that gave us a nice dense collar and the beginnings of a head. Now, it's simply a matter of constructing the head. This hair does not have to have nice even tips. There's no need for it. Take a nice big batch of hair. Trim up the tips nice and even after you clean the hair. A couple of loose turns of thread and spin the hair around the hook. Now we'll do that again. Again, you can use your fingers, push. You can use a hair packer to do this if you like, but I think fingers are a real good hair packer. And I think we'll need at least one more little batch of hair in there. A pretty substantial batch of hair, actually. And again, clean the hair thoroughly. Trim the tips even. A couple of loose turns of thread, like maybe 3. Pull tight. The hair will spin around the hook nicely. Push, push. Let's see where we're at. Yeah, maybe a little bit more hair. Yep, we got a little bit of a blank spot, but we just need a tiny swatch of hair. You have to kind of eyeball this and see when you have a nice full head. A couple more loose turns of thread, pull, and you can see that didn't really spin, it just filled in. It flared and filled in the rest of my head for me. Next, just get a little bit of space. We're not really building a head, essentially we're just whip finishing here, so we only need to take 4 or 5 turns. There we go. Okay, trim off the thread. Now you have to trim this to make it fishable. Turn the fly upside down, and when you tie a deer hair fly, the first thing you want to do, on a Sculpin anyway, is to trim the head nice and flat on the bottom. Okay, then we're going to make a bullet shape up top, kind of like this. We're holding the scissors kind of parallel. Then we'll come in from the sides. And again, we're just making that bullet shape. The Sculpin has a real broad head. That's one of the things that distinguishes it from other flies. We'll just go in the back a little bit. Now it's beautification. This fly is already fishable, but we just have to make it a little bit more symmetric or symmetrical. I'm trimming around the back, which is going to expose our collar. Pull the collar to the sides a little bit. I've got a couple pieces sticking out there and there. I trimmed out the top part of the collar, a little under here. And again, at this point, the fly is more than fishable. I'll actually put it back in the vise, stroke it a little bit, try to make sure it has a nice even contour. Blow a little of the loose hair out of there, but you can see the pectoral fins to the side for the collar, the nice wiggly marabou tail, and the sculpin shaped or the bullet shaped head that's actually fashioned to look like a sculpin. This, when you take a look at it, it has this really meaty, broad profile. This is what separates this fly from, say, a woolly bugger, which tends to be very skinny. This thing is broad, and it has that perfect sculpin head shape to it. And again, hundreds of fish from Spring Creek and other streams with it. How'd we do?